911, what's your emergency? 911, what's your emergency?
Be advised, Car 4 has control of the pursuit. Proceed with caution.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Crime Door. It's good to see all of you. I know that a lot of you are coming over from True Crime Web's channel, and he is with me tonight, and I am excited to have him. I haven't had him for a while on the show, so I'm really excited. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on because he's backstage waiting on us. So everyone, please welcome Steve from True Crime Web. Hello, sir.
Hello. I just saw your new introduction. I love it. And some of those images of the blood scenes on the crime scenes were taken by the offender because we didn't have blood serum separation or any drying on the drying chart for blood.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
Because time CSI gets there's blood is drying. It's not
blood is dry. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I'm really glad to see you. It's been a minute, and I know you've been super busy. And you've got a lot going on, not just with your channel and with your foundation, but in your life. New grandbaby, move, trying to keep things going there and on the farm. I don't know how you do it all, honestly.
You just stay behind.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I know you've been not together. I mean, I know Mrs. Steve's been away and you've been not together, and I know that that's probably different for you two. So I hope that that's going okay for both of you, because I know that can be a challenge.
Oh, yes. Like I said, we have property in Georgia and property in Florida, and Mrs. Steve's down there taking care of the grandkids and also taking care of her mom and dad down there. And she came home this week. And of course, Mrs. Steve's in Georgia, and she was just on my show a few minutes ago. And she's upstairs now. But yes, this long distance, you having been married for 34 years, it quite the challenge of getting to see each other, as much as possible.
I get it. I've been married for 44, and my husband is retired, but he was military for 34 years. So I know his deployments when he would be deployed and be gone. It's a different life when you're separated like that after you've been together for so long.
Absolutely.
But
it all work out in the end.
There you go.
We're heading that direction.
Yeah, there you go. So, we're going to talk Delphi. There's a surprise. We have had a week. I don't know how you're feeling about things, but I know that I feel like I am on a merry-go-round that just won't stop. It's like, all of these filings, all the things that, that's going on. And I know that a lot of it is normal, that this is what happens in court cases every single day in every court in America. I know that there's nothing really that crazy. Although I do have a very close dear friend who is a retired judge who I have beaten his ear or bent his ear for years about this case. And he's very invested in it with me. He thinks that it's extremely interesting. And he was like, there's just some things that have bothered him about some of the stuff that the defense has been doing. And he doesn't understand what their end game is with this. But I thought that one of the things that we could talk about, obviously, you're one of my law enforcement guys who I absolutely respect and go to when I have issues or whatever, when it comes to law enforcement and these cases and the crime scene and all of that, because of your wealth of experience, knowledge, and how you have done such a great job of educating all of us with your channel. The work you do, the work Mrs. Steve has put in, is amazing to me. And I know that you probably, when you started, didn't think you'd be where you are today doing exactly what you're doing today, but look where you have come. And I'm just impressed every time I watch one of your educational videos or live streams, because I always learn something from you. So I thought we could discuss the most recent dismissal. I went over it today. Again, it's a wordy document. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it or not. There's over 100 items on it. It's 20 pages long. And it's regurgitation of a lot of what we already know, but there's some more stuff where they're talking about Brad Holder and Westfall and all of that. And again, I just don't see the relevance of why they keep bringing this matter up when it has nothing to do with Richard Allen, and they're not doing anything or saying anything about Richard Allen. You know what I mean? It's like, I get that they're trying to use a third party here to blame it on, but you don't just pick and choose items out of discovery to say, oh, this is relevant. This is exculpatory. And that's what I see them doing. How do you feel about it all?
Well, as you said, as we started this conversation, and that it's like a merry-go-round. To us, it is, but you're not going to surprise the court. The court has precedents that have been set for hundreds of years and or well over 100 years of our court system and findings and everything. So you're not going to surprise the court. There's rules, and even if you do surprise them and a wrong ruling is made, there's things to correct that. But what I see is happening, and I haven't even heard or seen of these new documents you just are saying now, but I will take a wild guess that this is something that the defense is bringing up.
Yes.
And once you said 100-page,
100 items, 20 pages. It's
how many pages?
It's 20 pages. They
100
have listed 100 items
Okay.
of why they feel the case should be dismissed.
I'm impressed. They're getting better. But and this is the thing. Have you ever been in an argument and you were losing that argument? And what did you do? You deflect. You refocus it in a direction that has nothing to do with what your case is or what where you're losing the battle. You're losing the battle that this is the evidence they have against Richard Allen. And so we have to go into a new direction. Is that part of their strategy? Absolutely. They're doing what they have to do because they currently, and we don't know all the evidence, even this new last that I kept up with a week or so ago when there was a hearing where the prosecution gave some new evidence to the judge that said that it was extremely incriminating or something along those lines. And I don't think we really know what that evidence is yet.
No, because he wanted to keep it sealed.
Yes, and it's sealed. And so surprisingly, in this lull after that, we get this new, and what does it do? It takes it in a direction and it deflects into a new direction.
Yeah.
If you ever argue with Ruckus, that's what happens.
Oh,
He is
man.
the king of deflection.
He's something, ain't he?
He is. I mean, out of nowhere. I mean,
well, they filed a motion to dismiss. They filed a motion to have her removed from the case again. That all happened this week. And because of that, she postponed the 3-day hearing that was supposed to take place for all the other motions that she was supposed to hear. And my feeling is, I was so angry when I read this new filing, and I think it's just because this is what they want. They do these filings, they word them the way they do because they're trying to get a reaction out of the public. It's not so much even, I think, for the court's benefit. I don't think the court is going to favorably rule on this stuff. I just don't see it. And my thought of Fran at this point, Judge Gull, if she decides that she's had enough and she doesn't want to deal with this anymore, which I can't honestly see her doing, but if that were to happen, have they even thought about the fact that they could get another judge appointed that may be even stricter and less favorable to them than she has been? Because in my opinion, she has put up with a lot from these two. The last court date, we had Brad Rosie screaming at the judge in court, telling her in a very loud, obnoxious voice that she didn't know anything about this case. That is so disrespectful to the court. I just can't even imagine, and that was what, my judge friend said. He was like, man, if that had been me, the contempt gavel would have fallen and he would have been in contempt. And he doesn't really understand.
One of our judges would have said, well, what I have learned about the case is due to your leaks.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And be respectful. That's what, and because, and it is surprising that now, of course, we didn't get to see that. We've been extremely, we get reporting of that. And this is what the interactions, and I have no doubt that's exactly what it was. But it would be so much better if we could see it ourselves.
I agree. Yeah, and, Frank Meister's been.
I wish that
voice.
Was part of the of what we could look at and discuss, because has it been widely reported? Absolutely. I don't, and that can't happen in front of a jury.
No. Absolutely not. And
I don't see this going, that if it gets in front of a jury, these people, I wish there was another judge, for the fact that these people will never be able to get along in the courts. I do not think that if we have a sitting jury that everyone's going to play nice just because 12 new people showed up.
I see this going, sadly, I see now that it's become, to me, it's become personal with the defense against her. And it's not about procedural stuff anymore. It's just about them trying to paint her as being biased. And when you look at her and you look at her record, which I did, I went and I've done a couple live streams on her. She has a great record as a judge, and I don't think she would be where she was. I don't think the Supreme Court would have picked her to be the special judge for this case if they didn't have confidence in her in being able to handle this high profile and important of a case. I mean, we all have said this is going to be one of the most, if not the most important case in recent memory in Indiana. I mean, it's really huge for them. And the whole world's watching, and I think they should be embarrassed right now. The defense should be absolutely embarrassed by how they're making a circus of the case. And also, I know they have a job to do. We've talked about this. I've talked about this with Ruckus. I've talked about this with Frank Meister, that they are defending their client. So be it. Let them. I'm fine with that to a point. But for them to just keep regurgitating the same information over and over again into motions after motions, all they're doing is bogging down the court to keep things from happening. And for somebody screaming, I want my day in court, I want my, my constitutional right of a speedy trial, everything that they're doing speaks volumes to that's not the case. They don't want this to go to court because, in my opinion, they don't have a defense of him. I don't see the Odinist angle getting in, frankly. They have to have evidence of this, not just thoughts and theories and ideas and what ifs. They actually have to have evidence. Do you see evidence of Odinism or Odinists committing this crime? What do you think?
Do I see that there's any evidence of that? Is Richard Allen Odinist? I don't know. If he is, then yes. I mean, I don't know that, like everyone can look at the evidence, and we have polarized that we have people that absolutely Richard Allen is the offender, and you have people that absolutely is Odinist, or it's Ron Logan, or it's Kagan Klein, that they played roles in this. There's multiple actors, and has the prosecution and Doug Carter assisted in, and the FBI also in clouding this issue? Absolutely. It's just one huge cloud, and with where other actors are involved. Do I believe that there was some type of ritual that occurred at the scene to the offender? Absolutely. I believe there was a ritual. What that ritual is different than that it was all to Odinist. No, but it's a ritual to that offender to commit certain acts, because certain acts were committed there that had nothing to do with a homicide. That you don't go out and commit and place certain items and do certain things without being a ritual to yourself, whatever purpose that was.
Right.
And so we have to be careful when we look at rituals, that rituals can occur, but they don't have to be Odinist rituals. It's what feeds the fantasy of the offender.
No, exactly. And I couldn't agree more with you. And this whole thing about now they're all hooked on the fact they've come out in this new filing and said that the state, that law enforcement has purposely withheld information and purposely didn't do some things, like they didn't do an extraction of Brad Holder's phone on the 17th of February when they interviewed him, but they did an extraction of Logan's phone. Well, Logan had a relationship with Abby. They knew that. And so that made sense to me that they would do an extraction of his phone, but not necessarily his dad. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like they're reaching because of what they know now. We have to go back to what they knew then. There's so much more that's known now. But early on, when they were looking at him, I don't think they had any reason to firmly think that he had anything to do with it. Now, did the FBI look at him? Yes, they have said that. Jerry Holman said that in a deposition. This is all in the defense's documents, that they deposed him, and he said the FBI are the ones that looked at Brad Holder. If the FBI looked at him, at Brad Holder, I'm confident that they looked at everything, because they're thorough. And that's what they would have done with Ron Logan. I think there was a lot of people in the very beginning that they were taking a look at. They keep calling him a suspect. And they said because he was a suspect, they should have done these things and didn't do them. And now they don't have audio or videotape of his interviews. That's a problem. They think that they did it on purpose. But they even come out in their filing and say, we cannot 100% say that this information is exculpatory. Well, if you can't say that and you can't prove it, then why are we even talking about it? Because that's the only way it's going to get into this case, because this case is about Richard Allen and what they have on him, not on what you hope they might have had on Brad Holder or Patrick Westfall or Elvis Fields or anybody else.
Well, from a law enforcement standpoint of who we might do extractions on is that you may have a baseline of questions that say, these are the people that we're going to pull extractions on. Were they within a certain distance at a certain time of the crime scene? Are they, do they have an alibi? Were they elsewhere? But if the parameters or whatever the template is of certain questions being formed at anyone that was within a certain distance of ground zero of where that crime occurred, when we interview them and we have access to their phones, or we're going to get warrants for extractions or pulling their phones, then yes, I can see that. But there's going to be, why waste time on pulling something if they have an absolute alibi that they're wherever they're at work. There's no need to see it.
Right.
Because the people, if you're not it's impossible to be at two places at once. And if you have an absolute alibi and you're not there, we're looking for the offenders. Now, if you find out that from the offenders that they contacted some of these people during critical times from their extractions, then you include them in part of the investigative process. If that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense to me. And they state in this document that they extracted information from 101 phones, and they don't specifically state who these phones are, but they say that a majority of them had nothing to do with the crime.
Well, and they're going to be that's within this certain web of distance and possibilities of persons of interest. And let's see what's on these phones.
Exactly, because you have to look at everybody. You have to look at the people that are close to the victims, which would be family members, friends. You look at all of those people. So you are going to look at their phones or ask to see their devices or whatever. Becky admitted that she went home and got the devices and brought to them so that they could, do all of those things. I mean, it doesn't take rocket science, but they keep talking in this document. You'll love it because they keep talking about common sense and logic. And I'm just like, I wish I could start seeing some of theirs because I just see them not having any common sense, truly. But yeah, I mean, their whole thing is about the fact that it all revolves around lost evidence, purposefully lost, possibly, I mean, all of that's worded in there. And I'm just like, that's a lot, I think they're throwing things at the wall to see what will stick. Again, I know that that's what defense attorneys do. I watched a recent, I've been on a Paul Holes kick. I don't know why, but I've been watching a lot of his stuff lately. And I watched an interview with him from CrimeCon 2 years ago, where he said that when he was talking about the Golden State Killer case, that he hunted that guy for 10 years, and finally got him 3 weeks after he retired. They got him. But he talks about the fact that this is the problem, or this is the not really, doesn't really call it a problem. He says this is the way our justice system works in this country. Once you get them and you've got your suspect and you've arrested them and you've gone and you've done all the stuff, you've got the probable cause, you've got your search warrants, you've done all the stuff, and you have him incarcerated and you're getting ready to go to court. This is where things get dicey, because the system is set up so that the defense has all of these things that they can use and do to try to derail or throw a wrench in their state's case against the client. And they do. And he said, and what they do with these is that they end up delaying these cases for years before they ever get these people into court, especially with these big high profile cases that we're talking about, where we have serial murderers, the Idaho case. I mean, there's just some of them that it's going to be years before these cases actually ever get, to trial. And I think people are frustrated with this, Steve, simply because it's already been 7 years. It took a long time to catch this guy, and everybody wants a resolution. But the reality is we could be looking at longer if he doesn't plead. Do you think that's...
Oh, absolutely. And time is on side of the prosecution for the fact that new technologies, DNA is getting better every day. And I absolutely, and I don't know how many times I've stated it, and I'll state it till the end of time, that I believe there's the offender's DNA, Richard Allen, is going to be at that scene somewhere on one of those victims, on the clothing, on those sticks. You cannot handle them. You cannot, that principle is driven into the CSI world. You do not enter into a crime scene and not take something with you and not leave something.
No, exactly.
And it's there.
I believe they have DNA. I've believed that since 2017. Kim Riley did an interview with Michael Catt, who he was before you were on YouTube, but Michael Catt covered this case extensively, and unfortunately he passed away. And he had a YouTube channel, and he would go out and interview, and he interviewed Kim Riley of the ISP and asked him, they were getting ready to go. It was after Daniel Nation's name came up as a possible suspect. It's one of the people that law enforcement actually said they were going to go look at. They actually went to Colorado because this guy was from Indiana, and he was accused of attacking people on a trail with an axe or with a hatchet. And so they were worried that, because it was outdoors and what he was doing, that he may be involved in this. So Michael Catt asked him directly, do you have DNA? And he said, we have DNA. We have enough to rule people out, is what he said. They may not be able, at that point, may not have been able to rule people in, but they could rule people out. And my feeling is because what Paul Holes said, when you get a mixture of victims and offenders, bodily fluids or blood or whatever we're talking about, biologics here, back then, depending on how much that mixture is degraded because of it all being mixed together, it's hard to get a complete profile, DNA profile of the offender. Maybe that technology is better now.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. At some point, it will be better. I mean, I remember the early days of DNA, and it's nothing like what we are at now. The advancements have been made over the years, because DNA is really not that old of a thing that in our court systems. You know,
No.
I mean, of course, people can say, well, 30 years is 30 years. But in my world, that's nothing. In the court systems, that's nothing. I remember when we could even with fingerprints, we had a certain level of crime that you on fingerprints themselves, unless there was a felony, you couldn't get certain testing done for fingerprints. But that technology changed with the APHIS systems and everything that came in, and all those systems had to be court tested and court proofed, and just like DNA has. And these new tests and everything that comes up, we saw it with the OJ trial. What happened with DNA in it, and so. The technologies, I think, will play a part as far as DNA in this case. If this case goes on another 2 or 3 years before it goes to court, which there's a good possibility of it, there's nothing that says that if these attorneys can't defend him, they're going to string it out to the last day that they can.
Yep. And I think that that's true. And that, I believe that, that's all they have. I mean, I just don't see, if they really believe that their client was innocent and they believe that he had a good alibi, they would absolutely have him in court, not have him sitting in prison for 2 years. I mean, we're getting ready. It'll be 2 years here real soon, in just a few months. And for him to, and that's another thing. I mean, they keep touting about his mental status and all of these other things about where he's being housed. And frankly, I don't care where they house him at this point. I really don't. I mean, take him out, put him back in Carroll County. I don't care. I just want the man kept safe. Now, they say they can't keep him safe in the county jails because of his high profile of this case, and the lack of staffing. I don't think people understand how small these communities are, and how small these county jails are that we're talking about. But I mean, when you've got a man who has given over 30 confessions to different people, including his mother. I go back to that one because I'm a mom, and I just can't see somebody going to their mother and admitting to committing this type of a crime against 2 little girls if they didn't do it. Why would you break your mother's heart like that? Who would do that? That's part of me. I still say, and my family members that are detectives told me last fall, they're like, Kristen, his confessions are going to be his doing in, because they're not going to get able to get rid of all of them.
Well, I'll dare say that most of us can look at ourselves and say the only time we ever lied to our mother was in denial. It's not in that we admitted. It was in denial. And that's not the case we have here.
Exactly. And I just, I'm like I said, I just feel that I just don't think they have a leg to stand on, but that's just me. But these filings are crazy. Like I said, when I'm done tonight, I will send the documents to you. Since you haven't seen them, I'll send them to you so that you have them. But
yeah, 100. You said there's 100 items or something?
There's 100 items. It's 20 pages. It's unbelievable. I did a live stream today, but it wasn't an actual live stream. It was just a video. I read the whole thing. So if you don't want to read it, you can listen to me read it. but at the same time, I mean, it's a lot.
Well,
Over and over again, they continue to beat.
anything new?
The only thing new that I saw in there was that they were mad because that they had not extrapolated data from Brad Holder's phone, and they feel that that was done on purpose. They basically call Jerry Holman a liar and say that he lied under oath. They're basically saying the same thing about Tony Liggett. And they basically are saying that Patrick Westfall's phone, when he was brought in for his deposition last fall, there was no data on the phone from before that date. So when they called him to say, we want you to come in, they think that he erased all the data off of his phone. And they asked Jerry Holman about that. And Jerry Holman said, people get new phones. People erase things off their phone all the time. I mean, just because there wasn't data doesn't mean anything. I mean, I just see them reaching. I said that when I was reading the document. I'm like, I just feel that they're reaching for everything. And we've said this before, if you want to look at something and pull it out of context, you can make it say pretty much whatever you want it to.
Oh yeah. Well, I hate that this. We've never had one hearing yet that went that I understand that has ever went according to plan. Have we? Have we had a hearing that there wasn't any surprise yet?
Have we had a hearing where there wasn't a surprise?
Yes.
No. No.
Well,
I was actually very, very surprised that she postponed this week's hearings. I told Frank Meister I didn't think that was going to happen. Because she didn't rule on Friday, I really didn't expect her to rule on Monday and say, okay, everything's canceled. But she did. And I think she made it in her ruling. She said the reason that she did was because there's a 45-page document asking for her to recuse herself. And that 45-page document, she needs to be able to go over. And she didn't, they just filed that document last week. They asked for that in the previous hearing in court verbally, but they and themselves, they have strategy of their own. They wait until the very last minute to file things as well, to not give her the time to go over it and rule. Do you see what I'm saying?
Of course. Yeah.
It's all strategy. And, I just think it's absolutely crazy. I really do hope she doesn't disqualify herself. I think she's done a good job, in my opinion. She made the one mistake that we've all talked about. And I just think that from now on, she needs to do everything in open court, say everything in open court, put it all out there on the record, whether if they look foolish or sloppy or shoddy or whatever, because that was the other thing. They asked her to remove all that language from her order when she called them incompetent and sloppy. I laughed about that. And so did my judge friend, because he said they absolutely have been sloppy and incompetent. Why would she not say that to them?
Yeah. Yeah. You don't leave in a conference room evidence that public has access to. Sloppy? Yes, I'd say that. There's probably other words that are maybe better and more professional, but sloppy. If the defense can throw things out there for the average layman to understand, most certainly the judge can too.
No, yeah, exactly. I'm like, what's good for the gander is good for the goose, right? No, I just, I don't think she wants to have a circus, but that's what I see this becoming. And it does remind me of OJ in a lot of ways, because if you remember, and I know you do because of our age, both of our ages, that you remember it quite well. They didn't like Ito very much. And Judge Ito became almost like a laughing stock of that court case. And he lost control a lot in the courtroom. And I don't want to see that happen. Like you said, that can't happen in front of the jury. It just can't.
I agree 100%. And I hate that. I wish we could see it. I mean, but we're having to rely upon people that absolutely, I believe, wouldn't mislead us, because it's, everybody has their own take on it, but I'd much rather see it, with
I
my
agree.
own eyes.
I absolutely agree. I think that there's a number of reasons why they want to delay. Witnesses tend to forget. That was the other thing that they were on about in this document, was that Brad Holder, when he was deposed just a month ago, they brought him back in, the defense did, and deposed him. He said that he had met Abby twice, where prior he had said he'd never met her. And then the other time he was interviewed, he said he met her once. Well, this last time he said he met her at Patrick Westfall's house. I just find that to be ridiculous, in my opinion. One of the things that's upsetting me about all of this is that they're dragging Abby through the mud. First of all, she was a 13-year-old girl. 13. She wasn't dating anyone. Anna talked about this at length, about her relationship that she didn't even know. Her mom did not even know this was happening. But I believe it was all online. They went to different schools. They lived in different cities. Neither one of them, Logan wasn't driving to Abby's house and meeting with her and going on bike rides and doing all this. That's not what was happening between these two. And it was more of a boyfriend kind of thing and a crush kind of thing, I think. It wasn't dating. And everybody says it. They say it over and over again in this document. And they also say it in court. TV's been saying it over and over. And it makes me furious, because it's making her sound. She was 13. Would you let your 13-year-old daughter date, Steve? Come on.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Even if she was the worst person in the world,
I know.
It does not matter. She was a child, and no child, regardless of what they've done, deserves what happened to them that day in those woods. No one deserves that. So it, like I said, it's just an absolute tragedy that we even have people in society that would bring up those points.
No, exactly. Hey, Dawn, thank you so much for your $10 super sticker, or excuse me, super chat. Sorry. Steve, did you ever get my email about my on-site Delphi observations?
Yes, I finally got it.
Okay. Good to know. Look who came in the house. We have Ruckus in the house.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
Ruckus.
he probably wants his Sherpa, his personal Sherpa, Steve, to come down and mow his yard or something.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that the other thing that they were talking about was the lost evidence of the photograph that was on Brad Holder's Facebook page showing two women in the woods. They called it a mock crime scene, with sticks on them and laying with their arms in similar positions to the victims and stuff. That was on his Facebook prior to this happening, by the way. And they said that this was the prosecution lost, or law enforcement lost, the photograph because was never turned over to them. And they actually had to go to Georgia to get it from some guy. Well, I laughed when I read that, because I said it in my live. They didn't have to go to Georgia. They could have talked to me. They could have talked to any of us on YouTube. There were tons of YouTubers and Redditors that deep dove this guy's Facebook back in 2018. I have tons of pictures from his Facebook, and that was one of them. I don't think that anybody was getting rid of anything. I just don't think I think they thought it was a nothing. They didn't see it as being relevant. Just because that's up to law enforcement to decide, right?
Yeah, I mean, you get all.
Can you explain that part when you go to
What's-
and you're investigating a case and how you determine whether it's relevant or not and how you move on from that? And if you find evidence that leads you back, how you would revisit that? But that doesn't mean
Context.
that you just threw it out the window and said, I don't care about it.
Context has a lot to do with it. What was the context of it? Why was it done? Were they all part of a Odinist ritual, and we had girls out in the woods and we were preparing them for a ritual? Is that what they're building on? I have no idea. I haven't seen the pictures from 2018. I don't even know how similar they were, or even if they were similar. But I doubt that Facebook, that they had, from the images I saw, was the images y'all have of one of these women nude?
No,
Okay,
they were fully clothed.
fully clothed. Was the were they in proximity and the same layout design?
No.
Okay, all right. And so I don't know where it's going then from their standpoint.
It's just two women in the woods laying in the grass with
Well,
sticks over them and their arms up.
well, they'll have a field day with me and Mrs. Steve, with me and her in the woods.
Did you put sticks on her
If
again?
you took mine of what Mrs. Steve and I have done out in the woods of this and took it out of context, then you could say, "Oh, this guy here is scary."
Well, I'm sure Ruckus thinks you're scary sometimes.
Oh, I'm just a stepping stone to him. Carrying his bags, laying on the ground, he steps on me to get up a hill.
Oh my. Oh. Hold on a second. CJK says, Kristen, someone just posted that about Abby yesterday, I believe, and that Abby was not having a relationship as being tossed about. This person was adamant about it. It's true. It was a boyfriend-girlfriend thing, but I think it was online. And I do believe that, as much as 13-year-olds can be infatuated or whatever, I definitely know that her death affected Logan a lot. He had her picture on his Facebook for a long time after this happened, like a couple of years, and he ended up going in the Marines. So, and I know he still stays in contact with Anna. So, I mean, I firmly believe that there was a relationship of some kind there, but we're talking 13, and that when they say dating, come on, it's it's not that's just it bothers me. But hey, Tech Death, I did not see you come in. Hope you're doing well, my dear. Thank you so much for being here. I guess my biggest hang up with this defense team is if you have a guy who's put himself on the bridge wearing the same thing in the video at the same time that this crime was being committed, and he cannot say what he was doing besides the fact that he was watching fish, and then he admits it, where are they going with that? How are they going to get around that? Bringing up the fact that Odinists or other actors or whatever, that doesn't negate their client's guilt.
Agree.
And I just don't understand. So, it's sad. And
Like I said,
what I
he's
will
done more. He's done more to indict and more harm to his defense than anyone else. And we often see that the persons responsible for crimes are usually uh, the ones that carry all the weight that leads to their convictions for committing the crime. I mean, if you're there, you're there. If you commit the crime, you have to be there. He was there. And he's painted himself into a corner. And now the defense has to scream from the top of their lungs. And if it takes 1,000,000 times for them to scream from the top of their lungs to drive their narrative, that's what they're going to do. They're going to try to drive their narrative, deflect it away from their client the best they can. And but they won't be able to do that regardless of what's happening on the YouTube world. That's not going to happen to the jury. They
Right.
won't get to be able to be repetitive. It'll be asked and answered.
Yes, exactly. And they won't be able to keep going over it and rehashing it. That won't happen either. And
Yes.
the other thing too that they brought up that was new in a way was the interview with Jerry Holman and Richard Allen that led to his arrest. That day when he came in, they're stating that the first few moments of the tape where Jerry talks about talking to him about you understand your Miranda rights are still in effect from when they talked to him the 10 days before or whatever, that part of the tape's missing, is what they claim in this document. And they want to know why that would be. And would that be because Jerry Holman knew he screwed up and didn't want them to be able to have that thrown out? And I'm like, what did he say to Jerry Holman that day that they so badly want to suppress? Because there's some reason that they're focusing on that, because they're trying to suppress whatever it was he said to Jerry Holman that day that led to his arrest.
You don't have to have recordings of anything. Testimony is good enough of what occurred during the Miranda. And if everything had to be recorded, the FBI would never be able to testify to anything because they do not record. They don't record.
And that they brought that up about Dan Doolin. They basically threw him under the bus because they said that he didn't have a recording of his conversation with Richard Allen, but he has multiple recordings of other people he interviewed. And Dan Doolin said, I must not have recorded the interview with Richard Allen. And all I can tell you is this: he was standing outside a grocery store. I don't expect that he did record him. And from what I remember about what we know about what Dan Doolin said, his biggest takeaway from his talking to Richard Allen that day wasn't that Richard Allen was there. Wasn't that Richard Allen was there on the trail. It was that Richard Allen saw 3 teenagers, because he made a note on his notes. We need to look into those 3 girls. That's what he took away from that interview.
And if they had followed up with that and spoke to those 3 girls again about the guy, and that if they just made that connection and that they missed that one line of, here's the guy that says that he's the guy that those 3 girls saw, because law enforcement would have been looking at that guy, and they just missed it. And I hate it. And it's brought us to this point.
Emily, I'm going to I don't even really want to address this, but yes, conspiracies can happen. I don't think that they're a real thing that happens every day, but this world has gone crazy with conspiracies theories, in my opinion. But the amount of people that would need to be involved in a conspiracy in this case makes it absolutely more likely that somebody came down in a spaceship and committed this crime. And that's what I'm going to say to that.
Well, we can learn from our politicians of when words are used, even with words conspiracy, or even when you use the word homicide, there are justifiable that we get together, we have a common goal, but it's a lawful common goal. It's not unlawful. And so people use, and I know that just the term conspiracy has such a negative part of it, but still, we work together for a common end. And I know that, there are probably going to be some people that don't look at it from that standpoint, that you can have where there's people that will agree to come to a common cause. And is it a conspiracy? In some form of the word, it is, yes. And it can still be lawful. It doesn't have to always be that it has bad intent. Because when law enforcement work together, we get together and we come up with a plan of action,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a conspiracy of
Oh
working
yeah,
together.
absolutely. It's just like planning an attack in the game of war, even though war is not a game. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
They sit down, they get all their generals together in a room. They talk about strategy, what they're going to do, and this is how we're going to go about it. Are we going to tell this to these people? It may not be true, but this is what we're going to tell them because we don't want this person to know this. We can't let this information out. All of that stuff happens.
Yeah, I just like I said, I've worked with a lot of people, and even with the term homicide, you have justifiable and you have unjustifiable homicides. Two different things, but they're still homicides.
Yes. And I've said all along, if they wanted to frame somebody, Ron Logan would have been the perfect person. He's no longer with us. They could have framed him when they had him in jail. They're not looking to frame anyone in this case. I just don't believe it. I will have to see true evidence of that before that would ever be something I would entertain.
I think the reason, and I really think that it was a toss-up, and this is just my personal opinion about it, that it was a toss-up that do we go with the FBI, that it's Ron Logan, or do we go with Odinis when it's Click that says that he's investigated and he thinks it's the Odinis? Which one of the law enforcement ones that they're going to go with? And for whatever reason, the Odinis won out. But that's just my personal opinion of why they're going that way. I always thought that the probable cause affidavit that the FBI put Ron Logan as the offender, basically, that he committed the homicides. I thought, man, we're going to go with this. And at least one juror will stick with that,
Yeah.
you got the highest, you've got an investigator that laid out their career and introduced themselves in the wording of that probable cause affidavit with all their experience, and that Ron Logan is our guy. And it turned out not to be so, from my understanding. But I thought that was a strong point.
And the other thing too is we know so little about Richard Allen. We have all these people that are professing his innocence. I mean, they're basically saying he's innocent and they don't know anything about him. Nothing. None of us do. It has been kept so close. I mean, we don't have people out there talking on the street about Richard Allen, what he was like when he was a kid, what he was like, 10 years before. What was he like before he got married? What was he like after he got married? What kind of a family man was he? What was the activities that he liked to do besides we know he liked to go outside? Obviously, he talked about that, and we saw him with his wife on vacation, so we know they hiked. What other things did he do? We don't know anything about Richard Allen. And for people to say, in my opinion, this guy couldn't have done this, he's innocent, they don't know him. They don't know anything about him. And these kinds of criminals, and I know you know this because you dealt with them throughout your career, these types of criminals lead separate lives. Their criminal life is compartmentalized away from their family lives. And a lot of time, we don't know what led to this. We, honest to God, don't know what happened out there that day. We don't know yet.
I've rode in cars and talked and had people sitting in the back seat as I transported them to jail. And I would talk to them. We'd be serving warrants or whatever, or had to pick up some high risk people. But one of the most interesting conversations I ever had, and I've told this story before, but it's extremely interesting, and I'll never forget it till the day I die, where I was taking this guy that we were picking up. He was in Georgia, and he had been released from Florida, violated his parole, and he had been released for a homicide, and very well mannered, very well spoken, and I said, as we were going back to the jail, I said, "What was you convicted for in Florida?" And he said, "Homicide." And I said, "Well, who was the victim?" He said, "It was this lady." And I said, "Well, why did you commit the homicide?" And he said, "Well, she knocked on my door." And I said, "You killed a lady for knocking on your door that you didn't know, a perfect stranger?" And he said, "Oh, no, we talked for 2 or 3 hours." I mean, and never skipped a beat, meant nothing to him. Probably one of the most dangerous animals you could ever deal with. And it, that he,
God, that just gives me
yeah,
chills
that
for you to talk like that, because that's the type of person that you never want to come across, that you never know when you do until it's too late.
yeah,
You
he
know,
was insulted by me, even insinuating that he would commit a homicide to someone he didn't know, and it offended him. He said, "Oh no, we talked for 2 or 3 hours. It wasn't that he would commit a
wasn't a
homicide
complete
of a
stranger."
perfect stranger." Now he didn't say if he had if he had restrained her for those 2 or 3 hours, but
Lord Almighty.
oh yeah,
Lynn, thank you so much for your $10 super chat. The more the defense is desperate, the more Rick Allen looks guilty. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you so much. That is just crazy.
oh yeah. I mean, when you're talking to these people, and that's what I'm saying. We don't know where on the scale that if Richard Allen is the offender, where on that scale is he as far as being narcissistic, psychopath, sociopath, whatever you want to call him? Where is he on that? Because if he is of that nature, it meant nothing to him. And whoever committed these crimes, it meant nothing to them for the fact that we have, whereas if you had one victim, it'd be one thing, but we have 2 victims, and we didn't stop with one. He did 2 within a very short time. And so there's no remorse. The individual that committed this crime is a dangerous animal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ruckus says he thinks he's going to plead out, and he's been saying that, and I know that. I just want to address this. In my opinion, no one should be saying he's guilty or innocent. That opinion wins me no friends. Well, first of all, I'm not here to be your friend. Second of all, I just want to say that it is an opinion. I'm entitled to it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to buy into it. That's up to you to believe what you want to believe. I base my opinion on the evidence that's been presented so far in the case. That is all. I think he's Bridge Guy. And at this point in time, Bridge Guy, in my opinion, is exactly what law enforcement has portrayed him to be. He's the man who brandished a gun and took those girls against their will off that bridge and marched them down a hill to their death. Yeah. What happened at that point, we don't know yet. But that's enough in the state of Indiana to charge him with murder. And I believe that that's what we need. That's what I know at this point.
Yeah, as long as they're innocent until proven guilty is all in the eyes of the court. It has nothing to do with individuals. We're not going to be on the jury.
No. Nope.
But as long as we can pull a jury of individuals that don't hold someone innocent or guilty, that or they can look at the case and say, right now, yes, he's innocent until someone proves me that he's guilty. That's all that we require of our courts. And I think that is the basis of where we always have to stand. Absolutely, I can't be on a jury for the fact that I look at a probable cause, and when you go out to serve those warrants, a lot of these warrants you serve don't matter if it's search warrant, doesn't matter if it's arrest warrant. You don't know the person. You didn't watch the person testify to the judge. You don't have the ability to question anything other than what's in those probable cause wordings. And whatever's in that probable cause affidavit, you take it and you run with it, and you're willing to put yourself on the line up to the point that, there's officers every day that get hurt and far worse, putting a lot of weight of what's in those affidavits. But that's part of our job, that we take it to mean that when the court says, we have probable cause to arrest this individual, we have probable cause to search this house, go and get that done, we're going to do it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We'll do it at all costs.
Sees Through says, Rick told the truth, in my opinion, until he tried to say he was sitting on that bench, regardless of what timeline he chooses. He would have been seen there. He wasn't. So where were you, Rick? You can't, he was on platform 1, standing there. We know that Betsy saw him, right? Within minutes of that, she sees the girls. You and I have been on that trail. I know
went back and I've looked at my recreations of my video editing.
Right.
And I've went back and I've timed it that even where she met the 2 girls that she says is Libby and Abby.
Mm-hmm.
If you went halfway back and she says, I met them pretty well midway point.
Yep.
When you come to that midway point, if you watch any of my videos of where I own those, that they're at a point of just within a few seconds of rounding a very, when you're walking that trail and you come around that very shallow last bend, you can see for 200 or 300 yards.
Yes, you can. And
so at that point, we're not talking about minutes that Richard Allen would have had time to
get away.
And someone else come in.
Right.
We're only looking at seconds.
Right. Absolutely. And that has always been a thing for me, because no matter where he was, even if he wasn't on platform 1, even if he was on the trail and he was sitting on a bench, that bench, they would have seen him. He would have seen them. And he could have gotten up and walked right behind them. But that's not what Betsy Blair saw. She would have said that because she saw Abby and Libby about 250 steps. If you didn't know, and I don't know if you know or not, but the 501 and the 505 are the name of the trails. Mm-hmm. 501 means 501 steps. It's 501 steps from that point to the bridge. It's 505 steps on the other trail to the water, to the creek. That's what those trail names were given for. So if you've got 501 steps, no matter where he was in that 501 steps, Betsy Blair would have seen him when she exited to go back walking after she left the bridge. If he was sitting on a bench, she would have seen him sitting on the bench. He wasn't on a bench. He wasn't sitting on a bench.
I absolutely believe that he had followed Betsy, or was following Betsy back. I honestly do think that he saw her and was following her and met the girls. And
I think it's very possible that that's exactly what happened. He saw her, left the bridge, followed behind, past the girls, and maybe the girls said something or made a comment that he may have heard, like, that guy's creepy, or whatever they may have said that ticked him off or set him off. I don't know. But for whatever reason, he turned around. And once the girls were on the bridge, he came after them. And that's kind of how I feel. The trees, the deer path, I always call it the deer path that's right there as you're getting ready to, step onto the bridge. And it was more of a deer path in 2017 before they redid all the work. Yeah. And it was really narrow, and you could tell that that's what it was, that the deer used that to get back and forth from the water and through the woods. And if you've lived in the woods like you have, and I have growing up, as I live in a cow town pretty much. That's what we call it. That's what the deer do. They create paths in the woods, and you can walk on them. and they're narrow. And he could have been there. I mean, he could have stepped off the bridge and stood in there, because if he saw them, as they were coming around that corner, it wouldn't have taken him anything to get into those trees. And if they were not paying attention, as you know, young girls can be talking and goofing off and whatever, they may not have been looking up. They may not have seen him if he did, hightail it into the trees there. I mean, that's possible.
Oh yeah, there's anything. I mean, he hid in plain sight at the pharmacy and in town for 5 years. He could have hid in plain sight and walked right past the girls. It was a walking trail, and they would have never, the first 3 girls he passed, or 4, whatever the first encounter, he went past them, and then they didn't call 911. He had the ability to walk past people without causing them to call 911.
Yeah, because, that's another thing the defense has been pounding away at in their little motions, is the fact that his face, was on a wall in the CVS where he worked for 5 years, and nobody came in and said, you kind of look like that guy. Well, he didn't look like that guy anymore. He changed his appearance. Look, I mean, I don't know how much more to say that, but I mean, if you look at the pictures of him on vacation with his wife, that is what he looked like 2 months before this crime happened. He had the goatee, the short, very kept goatee beard kind of, unshaven kind of look. Not this long, drawn out beard that we saw him with in court when he was first arrested. He was probably 70 pounds lighter, at least, than he was when he was arrested back then. All of that. I mean, and the hair. He had hair back then as well. I just think it's kind of crazy that people don't see that, and that Greg Abbott, good Lord. I got Jay Abbott and the other, and Greg, the other FBI agent mixed up there. But he said to us, when they had their very first press conference, pay attention to someone who changes their appearance. Because that's what they do. Because he wanted to be able to hide in plain sight. And I think when he found out that they weren't on to him, or didn't, if they were, they weren't letting him know they were, he thought he'd gotten away with it. I am absolutely positive that Rick Allen probably had a problem in his pants when they came knocking.
He probably had one about 3 days after the crime when he saw the video.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't think he had any idea that she had videotaped him. He probably knew, though, but as soon as he saw his picture, he was like, oh crap, who took my picture? Because at that time we didn't know there was a video yet. And we didn't know that for almost 2 more years. So it was like, I don't know. I do think he thought he got away with it. And I think that, somebody said that they think Betsy Blair is lucky to be alive. She is. I mean, I'm pretty sure she is. I don't know why, like I said, why, or what led to why what happened. If it was that he was looking specifically for kids or young girls, whatever. But I'm sure that we're going to find all of that out, and it may or may not make sense to us, because I'm ready for it not to make sense, because these guys don't really make sense for people that are, quote, normal. It's hard for us to wrap our heads around why someone would do this. And no answer seems to be good enough. As to what it would be. But I definitely think there was a reason he marched him off the bridge. If he wanted to just commit a murder, he could have just pushed him off the bridge and been done with it. Again, you take the chance of going with them, because if they grab a hold of you, you're in trouble. But I often thought that bridge, I mean, man, I wouldn't want to be up there with somebody I didn't trust, because or somebody who wasn't well balanced, because
Well, even when he met the first witnesses, that for someone that was on the phone checking his stock ticker, that he was able to remember and all the details about the witnesses of color of hair, things of that 3 days later. Today, I probably saw, I don't know, 50, 75 people. Mrs. Steve and I went out to eat and in our restaurant, and I may be able to describe one of those persons. That's because I knew them. Everyone else that was sitting at the restaurant, I have no idea of what their hairstyle was. Don't know how many's in the party. Don't know what they were wearing or their height. But for someone, I think even in that, when he first saw those first girls, that he was in predatory mode because he evaluated them pretty good. He knew the number of them.
Oh yeah.
And knew details, at least one of them who had, probably has to, will live with that he paid special notice to her.
Yep.
About her hair and things and her height.
Exactly. And I'm like, that's scary in itself, because those girls probably think every day, because they were Abby and Libby's friends, and they're probably thinking, oh my gosh, that could have easily been us. So, somebody mentioned they wondered how people that were out there that day felt about what happened. Survivor guilt is a real thing, and it's it really does make you stop and take a minute to think about. Todd says, Steve, I think Rick Allen was always expecting Delphi investigators to finally follow up with the interview they didn't conduct in February of 2017. Do you think that the DNR officer told Rick Allen they would be contacting him?
Probably so, for the fact that he made note of the girls, that we need to get in touch with the girls.
Mm-hmm.
And you would tell that guy, thank you for the information. If we need any further, that's almost like closing line always, L.E., that if any of what you've tipped in leads to more, we'll be getting back with you. And that's another thing that will absolutely come back to haunt Richard Allen, is how often did he carry a firearm? If it's well known he carried the gun every day, it's not an issue. But if he didn't carry a gun every day,
why did he carry a gun that day?
That's it. And that's going to be a huge
and
issue.
See, and I often felt, I know that people have gone back and forth on this over the years about whether or not this was a crime of opportunity or whether this was planned. Did he stalk them in some way? How did he know they were going to be there? I don't think he did know they were going to be there that day. I think he knew that there were kids off school that day. I think he knew the kids were out. Obviously, he worked at the CVS. I absolutely know that he knew that the kids were out of school.
I can tell you this: I've carried a gun probably more than most people have ever. I've carried a gun for the last, let's see, I was 22 and 60 for the last going on 40 years. Do you know how many unspent rounds I have laying around in the woods?
None.
That's
what I figured. That's what I figured.
And I've been in shootings, and I don't have any unspent rounds.
And my point is this: that location where the girls were found is so remote and so isolated. You would have to be local. You would have to know that location to want to march them over there. And if you have an unspent round over there, and you can say, it wasn't from me that day, but I've been out here before with my gun. He didn't say that. They asked him, if we told you that an unspent round that matched your gun was found there, how would you explain that? He told them he couldn't. because he'd never been down there. So if he's got an unspent round that matches his gun that's down there, that's damning. And if he had said, yeah, I've been down there, then he knew that location. Do you see what I mean? And maybe, had been to that location before, and it had some sort of weird connection for him. Anyway, it ties him to that spot.
We have just created a brand new test.
Oh,
I can't
Lord.
tell you.
We did? I'm
Yes.
excited. What are we going to do now?
I can't tell you.
Okay. All right.
But,
Doggone it.
I have an explanation now for the unspent round. I'm going to look. It's just a theory, but we're going to look at it.
Okay.
I mean, I
Awesome.
always thought that the unspent round was due to some type of struggle, which it could be, that between the Richard Allen and the either Libby or Abby, because I've seen where guns, there's certain things that happen with semi-automatics that if they're taken out of battery, the gun won't fire. It will decock, and then it becomes a paperweight. And could that have happened? And then he had to rack it? Absolutely. Don't know. But there's another possibility. I'm going to look into it.
Yay. I'm glad I gave you something to think about.
Yeah, my mind always.
It's, to me, I have a problem with the fact that there was a 40 round in his box on his dresser or wherever. But people say, oh, well, I keep this, or you know what I mean? I just, because of what we're talking about, that I find quite interesting. The headbands, find that kind of odd. I would like to know what kind of headbands they took and why, and what were they looking for? What was the reason?
The water bottle drives me crazy. Why did they take the water bottle?
Why did they take the water bottle? Yeah. I have an idea about that. I think it could very, very be that they found a water bottle similar to that one or identical to that one, either in the creek or somewhere around there. And, lo and behold, if you're looking for DNA, where better place to get it than off of a cigarette butt, which we know they found. I know dang well they found one because I listened to them bag it because they said they had it and they bagged it.
Found 5+ years later. Why? And that's what drives me crazy. It's not so much that they may have found a water bottle that was 5 years, but what was special about this water bottle 5 years later? That,
like I said, what happens if that was one of the pieces of the evidence they collected from the creek that day?
Well, I know, but do you keep a case of water around your house for 5 years?
No, but what if he always got his water from CVS? What if and it was a CVS?
Well, no, but it's a different lot number.
No, I get it. I get it.
I got water everywhere.
No, I get what you're saying. I was just, to me, it was like, well, so if it was an Ice Mountain water bottle and it was just the same brand, that might just be something that they,
it would have to be some weird brand of water. It could be if it was some off-brand, nobody in the world drinks water.
Yeah, I mean, if it was something like that, like I said, or like, again, if it was the CVS brand of a water bottle that was found at the crime scene and he works at CVS, again, it's not just one thing, it's everything stacked. You know what I mean?
It just drives me crazy. I can't figure out the 5-year water bottle issue. I've never kept a case of water in my life 5 years.
No, it doesn't last that long in my house, that's for sure. So tell me, what is going on in your world? I want to know. Like I said, I have been enthralled with the stuff that you've been doing with Bridge Guys Height. Your mind and how it works and the way you build your tests are just incredible. And we've learned so much. So I want to know what you've got going on that you can talk about. I know that you're getting ready to do some cross country stuff with some cases, and I want to tell everybody that's in my chat tonight, if you haven't, please subscribe to Steve's True Crime Web channel, and also go to it's truecrimeweb.org, right?
.com.
truecrimeweb.com, and there you can actually donate to his foundation, and it will help immensely the work that he does for these families, where he goes out and actually works in the field and does CSI work and investigating work on some of these cold cases. And the families, I know how I feel about him, and I can't even imagine how these families feel about him and Ruckus and these other individuals that work with him to bring some closure to some of these cases. So please make sure you guys go do that. But Steve, tell us what you got going on.
Well, we just got back from in March. I traveled 6,300 miles on working some cold cases and doing some work after the winter time of where I couldn't travel certain areas. But our biggest thing that we're about to do coming up in June is environmental DNA. Whereas we're trying, we're working with a university that we're trying to go out in extremely remote areas of where people have been reported missing and victims have been recovered, either from homicides or natural or whatever circumstances that led to their death, of where they've been exposed to the environment for several seasons. And we're going to do a study to determine that from their location downstream within certain watersheds, did their DNA migrate or become part of that ecosystem and wash downstream, for the fact that this can have a huge impact in searching for other missing persons. We're going to take these known cases and see if we can develop some type of template of where if there's someone reported missing and they could be in 5 or 10 different canyons or mountain ridge or line of mountains, that in each of these watersheds, can we discover their DNA within the environment? And that's what we're going to go out and do, for the fact that we'll have a huge impact, for the fact that if you don't have to search 50 miles of canyons and you only have to search one canyon, that yes, there's human DNA in this remote canyon that is coming downstream from upstream somewhere, that will have a huge impact in locating victims. And that's what we want to try to do. The university is extremely excited. We're in the final stages. I've got all kind of equipment. We're going to go out there and work this DNA. And even if we get certain DNA, such as what, it doesn't have to be so much that we can identify a profile from the DNA. As long as we find out it's human DNA in a place that shouldn't have human DNA, then that's a huge thing. And that's where we want to go.
That's amazing. And that sounds exciting to me. I will be really excited to hear Finn decided to join us. You see, he decided to come up on the back of my chair. He says, "Hi, Steve."
Beautiful cat.
But yeah, that sounds amazing. I can't wait to hear how that all goes. Do you look at the different, one of the questions was, do you look at the slow growing vegetation along the edge of the body of water, or?
Well, we're going to look at both studies of it being from water, wells, or versus running streams. It just has to be extremely remote. The eastern United States, there's so much, the population is so huge that the cross-contamination of human DNA is everywhere. And that's how come out west, where we have these victims that go into the extremely remote area, and there are very arid and not so much have running creeks and streams, because you'll have fishermen and things. We're looking for these extremely remote And the drier the area, the more likely, but they still have a yearly rainfall and snowfall, and there's the possibility of transference of DNA downstream in that watershed. So it will be both soil and water that we will be looking at. And does it mean that we will find it? Don't know. It hasn't been done, and that's the exciting part when you're talking to these professors, and you ask them a question of, well, will we have this result? And they look at you and say, we have no idea. It hasn't been done. This is all brand new, and they're excited for it. We're excited for it, and I'm hoping to get in touch with some agencies that the CSI teams will come out and work with us for the fact that they understand and they can get us access to certain things that without, it's just a fishing expedition, and we don't want that. We want it. Whereas if we can get out there and work with these professional CSI teams and gather up this data and have this impact, because like I said, through the foundation, we had this wonderful support and of where people contributed, and especially one contributor that says, I want this spent on this. And so they fully funded this study. And
that's awesome.
And they'll allow me to go out and now each of the DNA tests for each, like we may do, let's say that we collect on one watershed, we collect from 10 different sites within this, for the fact that we're trying to determine if eDNA can be washed downstream a half a mile, then it can have a huge impact. Because if it's a half a mile from where the victim is, then that's huge. But if you can only find DNA at 20 feet, it's useless. But we don't know yet. So that's what, but our supporters allow us to go out and do this. And hopefully it leads to a better understanding about DNA in the environment.
I would absolutely love to go with you. That would be to me, to just absolutely, I mean, I would just want to go with you and just take my phone and just record.
Well,
and I know
and I
you
will be
can't,
recording a lot of it, but now some of it I won't be able to share.
I know some of it you won't be able to.
Yes, for the study, for the fact that there's certain ethical issues of when we're dealing with victims and recovery sites, and it's not, my True Crime Web YouTube channel is different than my True Crime Web Foundation side. All the investigations and all the secretive stuff is on the foundation side. All the stuff that you see me when I'm creating content is on these well-known public cases. And now some of the cases, such as Elizabeth Collins, I created content prior to start working on it, but I can't create content on it anymore. And but still work that case. And but we it's just part of it. It's one big engine that each of them. What my True Crime Web YouTube channel does allows me to take off from work and travel. Those monies, the monies that's on the True Crime Web Foundation, there's oversight on it. I can only spend that money for the families, for working cold cases. And so that's what we do with that money. And it's absolutely amazing that I never believed that from the trying to become an ambassador for law enforcement, I would be in this position 2 years later.
I'm just, like I said, I'm just so excited because I was there when you started, and I've just been so mind blown at, I mean, you're such a great person, just a great person, period. No matter what Ruckus says, don't listen to him. But you're a great person and you have a big heart. And I don't think I would ever want to get on the wrong side of you, because I think you're such an excellent investigator that you would figure out, the criminal part of it. If somebody was doing something wrong, you're going to figure it out. You're going to find out about it. But you're absolutely our national treasure here in the Delphi community. Um, you
No,
know,
my
I was the
superpower,
one. I
I
was
have
the
a
one
very
who's.
simple superpower. It
I was
was
the one.
I can recognize true brilliance, and I surrounded myself with absolutely brilliant people, and
You are
brought out
you.
their best. And we I had a pretty decent career.
Well, I think that that's proven because just with the content that you put out, you know, it's it's so professional and so right up there with the best of the best, as in my opinion. And I think you're just going to go places. I think you're going to be amazed at where your channel goes. And my big thing is I can't wait to be around when you solve that case, because I really believe that you will. And there's not a case out there that I don't think is not able to be solved. I think it takes the right timing and the right people looking at it. Um, and sometimes cases, you know, are old and what. Hey, Shadowbox, good to see you. But with your eyes on it, like I said, the families are great. I know are very very grateful to have you, and you're doing great work. Um, Sees Through wants to know, given the size of the Delphi crime scene, how long would it take to process that scene on average? And how many CSIs would be working it, in your opinion?
On my team, there was myself and 3 or 4 investigators that were part of my team. Um, of course, can you have a larger? But you have to be very focused for the fact that um, the more individuals you have in certain things, that you have to be focused on what's important. When you first get there, of course, everything is from your initial contact with that first responding officer being briefed. What's going on? What happened? What have you found? What do we have? Where is the um, um, uh, ingress and egress into the crime scene? What do we have? And what has been sealed off? Where's our perimeters? Where's our secondary? And third, where is the third perimeter if we have to have it? But there's a lot of things that go on. But then once you look at the scene, you evaluate it and you determine what's important now. Because as you go into that scene, we got to know who the victims are, and are there other victims? Is there proof of life? Has that already been taken care of by the first responder? There's so much stuff to go on. But um, I've seen times that you and your team is 20 foot from a knife, and it's 45 minutes to an hour of going across this floor to make sure that there's no hair, fiber, anything that you're going to mess up between you and that knife. Uh, so every crime scene is unique. If you're in and out of a crime scene and a double homicide in less than a day or two, you're not doing your job. So
Yeah, see that. I just this afternoon was watching Paul Holes again. Um, he did a special on oxygen, where he was on stage in a group of people, a huge group of people, and he actually put together a mock crime scene and then showed them how to work it, because he was a CSI as well. I don't know if you knew that, but he reminds me of you because he was a CSI. He was also an investigator, um, you know, and obviously became a detective. So he knows all the things. He knows, you know, how to process a crime scene, what to look for. Um, and he walked through how to do this. I mean, he it was a double homicide. It was in a hotel room. Was the way they had it made up, and you know, it had blood splattered, and it had, you know, one of the victims was a woman, and she was on the floor, deceased. The guy was in bed on his stomach, and he was deceased, and he'd been hit with an axe in the back of the head, and I mean, it was just all these things, and he walked through that and explained you how you clear the scene, how you start looking at it from the CSI point, and you know, taking mental note of everything, and then before you start collecting, you have to look at what you're seeing first.
Oh yeah, and then you document photography,
All the
you know,
pictures.
and video, or you know, and now they've got all the laser 3D imaging that is available, and where we're going to move in the future. Eventually, a jury will be able to sit there and walk through a crime scene 3D. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They'll be able to sit in their box and be able to move through a crime scene. It's just a matter of time.
That's awesome. So basically, you know, the Delphi case, it was an outdoor crime scene, so it was going to take them a while. It was a big crime scene because the bridge is a crime scene. There's
Yeah, and they
everything.
didn't even realize that probably at the time.
Exactly. Not until they got her phone and realized what they had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they could have been looking at, originally all they had was, this is where they're dropped off at. This is where they found. They probably didn't even realize they crossed that bridge until that first picture of Abby on the bridge.
I wanted
Whenever
to
that
ask
was exposed.
you a question about the Gilgo case, Liz case, because something odd happened yesterday. They are back at Rex Heuermann's home,
Mhm.
and they are in there taking out boxes of stuff, and they are even saying they may be digging in the house and outside of the house in the backyard, whatever. So my question to you is, it's been 10 months since that search warrant was executed. What the heck happened that makes them go back, Steve? And why would the medical examiner be there yesterday?
They got a report back on something that says, hey, we have another victim.
Okay.
Or, hey, we got this picture made from another location, or they found something linking it to a whole new avenue of potential, and that where is there additional evidence there? That's just
Okay.
a guess, but there's something that they, on some report, that come back and said, guys, y'all need to go follow up on this.
And
Wherever
the
you got
medical
this,
examiner would lead you to believe that it's a body, right? Or body parts, or
it could be, yes.
DNA,
Yes, that we did a swap, or we got a soil sample, or we got something, and this popped up, guys. And now we got to go back and find that, oh, we got another DNA profile that we never knew.
we never
Who
knew.
is this DNA profile?
I just wondered, and I've been wanting to ask you that all day, because I was like, it was bugging me, and it was and I knew you'd know as to why.
I don't know if that's the case, but it has to be something that there's something report, or there was some image or something in the house that they looked at and said, hey, we got something else.
I hope this is true. Shadowbox just said that, and I saw this, but they didn't say who it was about. But they served a search warrant in New Hampshire today, and people think it may be related to Mara Murray. Man, I really, really want her case solved, and you know that is such a sad case. But yeah,
Is
that
that
would
the
be.
one with the car on the side of the road?
Yep, the nurse who left and left school and then just disappeared. Yeah, her car was on the side of the road, and no her, nothing. Yeah, it's sad. I mean, it's just crazy. Let's hope. But yeah, like I said, I don't think that there's any case out there that can't be solved if the right people are looking at it, or the right information comes through, or the technology catches up to where you need it to be. So, well, my dear, I have kept you here long enough. I'm going to let you head out of here and do what you need to do. I appreciate you so much being here. I always have a good conversation with you. I always enjoy having you on the show, as you well know. And I'm glad that you always give me the time when I ask. So thank you.
I appreciate it. It's an honor. Like I said, I absolutely appreciate what all, we have so many great people out there in the, that have these channels that bring awareness to these cases. It's all important. Not everyone has skill sets to do everything, but these families appreciate so much this focus that they get. And it's, absolutely necessary. And I thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're very welcome. And like I said, I feel blessed that we crossed paths, and I'm really glad that I can call you my friend. And you take care of Mrs. Steve now. Let's not be abusing her too much, dressing her up as bridge guy. I mean, really, Steve, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to buy, I didn't even have to buy her ice cream for this part. Now, when I drug her through the woods, I had to go buy her ice cream.
I know. Oh my goodness. Well, please tell her that we miss her and that we love her. And you guys take care of yourself. And thank you so much for a great show.
All right. Well, I'm going to go up and fix me another cup of coffee. Thank you for having me.
You're
and
very
y'all
welcome.
Take care and be safe out there, guys.
Yep. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Steve. Bye-bye. So there you go, guys. Great conversation. I always love having him. He is I just can't say enough about him. He is super, super knowledgeable, and there's nobody I would rather discuss this case with than him. And yeah, make sure you guys, if you haven't seen his video, his last 2 lives, make sure you watch them because they're really, really good. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. All my moderators, thank you so much for hanging in and taking care of the chat for me. Thank you to everyone who donated and supports the channel, no matter how you support it, whether it's just by being here and participating in my chats. I've always said I couldn't do this without you guys, and I mean it. You guys make it worthwhile. Remember, it is about Abby and Libby. Please keep the families in your thoughts and your prayers because this is a hard time for them. Good night, everybody.